Hello, welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and today I have an episode of Maker Musings for you. Maker Musings is a collection of shorter videos. I generally aim for them to be 30 minutes or less, and they are a place to just share some thoughts that I have about certain topics related to making and encourage you to think about what you think of them. And yeah, that's the quick synopsis of Maker Musings. And it's a more casual setting. That's what I wanted to say. I try to minimize editing on it so that I don't have to spend a lot of time behind the scenes working on them. And I don't generally prefer having to do a ton of research before talking about the topic. Again, it's a casual environment to share some thoughts that I have on certain topics, and maybe they will inspire you or encourage you to think about some of these topics and how they relate to your own making. So today what I wanted to share with you is the topic of magic numbers, knowing your magic numbers. So what does that mean? I will tell you what I think it means, or at least what I think it has been referring to in the dialogue of making things and making garments that fit ourselves. Magic numbers to me mean, how do you want your garments to fit in particular styles and for maybe various outfits, or what works best for you in I think specific to garments. I'm not sure they always refer to accessories, although knowing your stitch count that you prefer for socks, I think could be a magic number as well. I do have some notes jotted down just so that I keep somewhat organized and don't forget any major things that I wanted to mention. So right off the bat, I think knowing your magic numbers includes knowing your own body measurements. And for some, that may be very difficult to do. And so to each their own on wherever you are in that journey. I will just say that knowing your body measurements can help you pick a size from a pattern that best fits you. And a lot of pattern designers will say this pattern is recommended for a certain range of ease, and that should be able to help you pick a size. Some pattern designers have it listed out by what your starting measurement is, and then you pick your size based on that. So I think it's important to make sure you read the pattern for what the number means. Like, is this your finished garment measurement, or is this the number based on your body measurements? And then based on that, I think it's important to know your overall chest circumference and where that circumference is that you are measuring. So for some patterns, it might be important to measure your upper bust, which is like right by your armpit, or your full bust measurement. And if there is a significant number of inches between the two, maybe you would like to add bust darts to your garment so the front doesn't ride up significantly compared to the back. And some patterns may have that design built in, so you might not have to do any modifications, whereas other ones might direct you to a different tutorial so that you can look into adding those bust darts, which is created by Short Row Shaping, so that you may be able to add that in yourself for a better fit. So then knowing that measurement is just one part of it. I think it's also important to know where your natural waist is and what that measurement is, and also your hip measurement and knowing where that is. And so having those 3-4 general numbers, I think gives a good starting point to knowing what size of garment to pick. And now, depending on the garment, some of them may be designed to be cropped, very cropped, somewhat cropped, high hip length, or full length. And for those, a lot of patterns will give you the option between one or the other, but I still think it's important for you to know what's going to best fit you. So me personally, I know my numbers for a cropped. I don't like it super cropped, just knowing what I prefer to wear. So that will generally go anywhere from like 8 to 10 inches. And again, some of these numbers will also depend on the yoke depth. If it's a super deep arm side or a super deep yoke, then my body length isn't going to be as long to hit where I want it to hit. But generally these numbers are from like wherever the sleeve body separation is to the bottom of the hem of the garment. So for me, cropped is like 8, 9 to 10 inches. And then high hip length, so that would mean I would want it to hit at the top of my hip. It might cover the top of the hip a little bit. That's generally 11 to 12 inches for me. And then if I want full length, that's generally 13 to 14 inches. So that gives me a great idea whether I'm knitting a top-down garment or a bottom-up garment, where my sleeve separation point is going to be. The other thing I think is really important in knowing these numbers is also thinking about how you plan on wearing this garment. So if it's something that I plan on layering, I might want it to hit at natural waist so that if I'm putting it over like a dress that has a very puffy skirt situation with like gathering, if my garment goes past that gathered waist point, it's going to end up poofing in areas I don't want it to poof, and it just won't lay very flat. And so I'm going to want that to sit more at my natural waist, which is where the gathering starts. Now, I could also wear that cropped piece over like a button-up shirt like I'm wearing now with jeans or something like that. There's lots of options for that. However, I know personally that is not a garment that I'm going to wear on its own. And so knowing that's going to be a layering piece may help me decide the length of the sweater that I want it to be and maybe what kind of yarn I'm going to use. But the type of yarn I'm going to use, that's a whole different conversation here. Now, when I'm thinking of high hip, I feel like that's a pretty versatile length to have because I can use it as a layering piece with the longer tunic style tops underneath, or maybe I have a thin long sleeve shirt that I'm going to be tucking into pants and I want to wear like a high hip length cardigan over it, or maybe a high hip length slip over it. That's not something I'm probably going to wear with a dress that has a higher waistline, just because again, that gathered skirt section won't hit where I want the end of the top garment to hit. I guess with an open cardigan, that's probably fine. But if it's like a pullover, I probably don't like that so much. But high hip length, I feel like generally is pretty versatile. For full length, that's something that I know I'm going to want if it's a more oversized sweater, because it's going to be that comfy, cozy sweatshirt feel of something that I can just throw on over anything, put on over leggings. It'll still give a little coverage in the back. And I feel like for something that's really boxy, I don't necessarily want it cropped because then it's more tenty. Like the bottom just kind of tents out. So I don't like it for that. So for like a cropped top, cropped garment, I probably want more waist shaping so that it tapers in towards my natural waist, since I know my numbers for my bust measurement are bigger than my natural waist, but my hip is the widest point out of all three numbers. And so that also is something that I'm going to think about. So again, if it's cropped, I probably want some waist shaping so that it narrows in a little bit, depending on how much positive ease there is to begin with. And then for something high hip length, I want to make sure that it is at least my hip measurement, if not slightly bigger. Otherwise, it's going to be tight on my hips, but looser everywhere else. And I just don't love that look. And then for something that's full length, I definitely want it wider than my hips so that it flows nicely. With some garments that don't have any waist shaping, that's something that I can just add in. So if it's going to be a little bit smaller on the top portion that is smaller than my hip circumference, I can include some increases, gradual increases, so that it will extend to at least my hip circumference, if not slightly more than that, so that I have it a little more flowy and not have any negative ease around my hips. I think that is everything that I wanted to talk about on magic numbers. I think some of it just comes with experience from making a lot of garments, but if you're not there yet, I think it's still something you can think about, and you can measure some of your maybe ready to wear garments and see what you like about them, see what you like about their fit. Think about what you reach for when you are creating outfits for yourself, or maybe you're wanting to change things up. So maybe think about what outfits you want to wear and what's missing from your outfits, and figure out what it is that you can do to fill those gaps in your outfit options. So I think that is it for today's Maker Musings. I hope you are doing well, and I will talk to you next time.